Welcome to a very special episode of Get In. Today, we had a short interview with Mike Nichols. He's the head of sponsorship for Group 1001. They are the parent company of Gainbridge. Maybe you know them because they're on the side of Gainbridge Fieldhouse where the Pacers and the Fever play. They're also the lead sponsor for the Indianapolis 500. This is coming out. So we recorded this interview right before Game 3. So hopefully when you hear this Thursday morning, we're all excited and happy that we are now up 2-1. Also, I want to let you guys know for Game 4, here are a few of my favorite watch parties that I've seen. I wanted to give you 3 watch parties for Friday, Game 4, where you can check out the Pacers. So the first one, head downtown. If you want to be downtown and really feel the energy, you're going to go to Coach's Tavern. It's kind of right by Tin Roof there. Connor Daly said this was his favorite bar downtown. It's a good spot. The next one would be Kilroy's Classic. You can't go wrong with Kilroy's Sports Bar. Got to get the breadsticks. It's great. This is the coolest one that I've come across. Steve Lindsay at the Hangar. They're friends of mine. They did not pay me to say this. Let me say they did not pay me to say this, but I love this spot. For $30, you're going to get all you can eat pizza, nacho bar. You get 2 cocktails. They're going to have, oh my gosh, welcome raffles and all sorts of, a t-shirt cannon launch. They're going to do one of their, where you hang on the bar challenges. That's going to be really cool. They literally have like a pull-up bar. I did it once. It's kind of hard because they have one of those big oversized pull-up bars. So go to the Hangar, $30, get you all you can eat. You get 2 drinks. That I think seems to be the watch party of watch parties downtown. We're actually going to the game Friday. We're going to be hanging out in there, so it's going to be really fun. You're going to see a wrap-up video, all that stuff. But here is a quick interview. In the interview with Mike, we talk about all the different areas that Gainbridge sponsors, a little bit about who Gainbridge is. It's not an ad, I promise. Like, they didn't pay me either for this. But we talk about who Gainbridge is, why they support sports in Indiana, like the Indy 500 and the Pacers and the Fever. And we talk about like the last 7-year journey and the ROI as IndyCar has become more popular, as the Indy 500 has become more popular, as the Pacers have been better and the Fever have been better, like what that means for their investment in the community. So it's a really fun interview. You're going to enjoy this interview with Mike Nichols, Chief of Sponsorship, Strategy, and Activation for Group 1001, the parent company of Gainbridge. So I'm excited to dive into your guys' sponsorship strategy and what it means to have your name on the side of the building where the NBA Finals are being hosted. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me in.
Man, this is super exciting. Okay, so before we started rolling, Mike was giving me a little bit of his backstory from New Jersey, but now lives down in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Yes, sir.
After spending 15 plus years with the LPGA?
Yes, that's correct.
Heck yeah. Okay, so you went from the event side where you're out there, finding the sponsors, getting the people to, put their brand activation on the event, to now you're working on the brand side.
It's been a welcome change. So I was doing that, as you mentioned, was on the event and association side for close to 30 years of my career. So this was the opportunity to come over and be, the last 3 years I've been with Gainbridge, so an opportunity to be on the other side of the desk and try to take the learnings that I had as somebody who's putting on events, knowing what activations work, knowing where we could hopefully deliver sponsors at the various events that I was associated with, and try to turn those learnings into value for Gainbridge.
And so during this segment, there are like 3 overarching questions that I want to hit on. The first one that we're gonna get into is how many different events or teams or leagues even do you guys sponsor? The second one is going to be, who is Gainbridge? Like, I think a lot of people see the Fieldhouse but don't really know what Gainbridge is, and this will not be like a full-on sales pitch for Gainbridge, but we do need to know who the company behind the brand is.
Yep.
And 3, you guys started sponsoring the Fieldhouse 6 or 7 years ago or so.
Yep.
And like knowing the increase in your investment when we draft someone like a Caitlin Clark, when the Pacers make the finals, when IndyCar and the Indy 500 is hot, I just love to see like what you guys like thought you were getting versus like when the teams succeed, what that ends up getting you guys.
Sure.
All right? Sound like a plan?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to cover is how many of these really cool events or sports teams do you guys sponsor?
It's quite extensive. There really is truly no downtime with our portfolio, which is fun and exciting because there's always something new. So I would say sort of what I would call our tentpole events, as you mentioned, the lead sponsor, the Indy 500.
How long have you guys been?
We've been doing that, I believe, 7 years, I think we looked at.
So when so 7 years you guys have been the lead sponsor?
Yes, correct.
Oh my God.
Yes.
So you sit there and it's like this was 3 years ago when you kind of joined the team. They're like, Did you know a lot about IndyCar then?
Living in Daytona Beach, had a son who was a racing enthusiast, right? So I was not growing up in New Jersey, as you said. That certainly is not part of the culture of New Jersey. NASCAR, IndyCar, et cetera, isn't. But he was a big racing fan, and he followed all of it. So by the time I arrived here, I was very familiar with NASCAR, very familiar with IndyCar. So, but I would say that the event that did always cut through the clutter in New Jersey was the Indy 500. That was always an event you watched. I remember being at I was a soccer player growing up, so I remember being at Memorial Day soccer tournaments and having the Indy 500, propped up with the rabbit ears in the back of the car. But so yeah, huge event, and obviously for everybody, all your listeners here locally, they know the magnitude of the event. We're also a founding partner of the Miami Grand Prix. On the F1 circuit.
Oh.
Yep. So yes. So
you're double dipping on the racing there for sure.
It's a busy month of May. For your listeners who don't know, that starts off the month of May, and then obviously the Indy 500 concludes the month of May. So that's a busy week for us with not only those two races, but all that happens at the track in between here in Indy. We sponsor the number 26 of Colt and Herta in IndyCar that he drives the Gainbridge Honda. We're also aligned with Spire Motorsports in NASCAR. So we have a team that's driven by Carson Hocevar, Justin Haley, and Michael McDowell are the three drivers. So you'll see the Gainbridge brand as well as the Delaware Life brand, which we'll talk about in a minute. Across that, we're a sponsor of the Billie Jean King Cup, which is the World Cup of women's tennis. So it's an annual event. Your listeners who are tennis fans may be familiar with the Davis Cup on the men's side. It used to be called the Fed Cup on the women's side, Federations Cup. That's now the Billie Jean King Cup presented by Gainbridge. We sponsored the Annika on the LPGA Tour. I'm sure there's
What's the Annika?
So the Annika. So it's an LPGA tournament. Annika Sorenstam, widely regarded as the best LPGA player, at least of the modern era. So she's the namesake of the tournament, sort of the host.
Where's it at?
It's in Tampa Bay, Florida.
Nice.
So it's the second to last event of the year on the schedule. It's at a great golf course, Pelican Country Club down there. So we've been involved with that. Actually, our first foray into golf was in 2017 out at the Brickyard. There was the Indy Women in Tech Championship and presented by Gainbridge. And so that was sort of our first foray into sports, women's sports, et cetera. And that event has eventually evolved into what's now called the Annika. I think I'm sure.
Well,
and then obviously everything that's happening
one.
at the field house, right? Everything that's happening at the field house. So when you look at, NASCAR runs 40 some odd weeks a year. So we have that 40 weekends of the year. IndyCar is in the high teens and those sort of number of weekends. And then you got the Pacers, the Fever. So long story short, we've got something going on all the time.
What was the first sports sponsorship partnership that you guys dipped your toes into?
The first one I would say would be the LPGA Tour out at the Brickyard. So, and again, we've been involved with the LPGA from 2017 up until today, and for years to come as a part of our contract. So that was the first foray. But funny story, that experience out there with the Brickyard is ultimately what got our CEO Dan Tauris interested in IndyCar and the acquisition of Andretti that took place recently. So all roads in terms of our sports sponsorship lead back to that in a 2017 LPGA event out at the Brickyard, which is quite crazy.
That's crazy that an LPGA event took you guys from, like, you're a sponsor of the LPGA to becoming the title lead sponsor of the Indianapolis 500, like that, all from an LPGA event. Were you the sponsor of the Fieldhouse at that point?
No, we weren't. I think we took over the Fieldhouse. I think we're in our third year with the Fieldhouse now. So right before the reconstruction is when. So it was just at the beginning. I think they sort of announced us as the lead sponsor as the construction was taking place. So it's been 3 or 4 years at the Fieldhouse.
What was the strategy behind, like, we're going to be sponsored of a Fieldhouse and the Indianapolis 500 and LPGA events and tennis? Like, what was the thought process behind that?
A source of community pride. Like, we're headquartered here in the community. Dan Towers, our CEO, he's from Muncie, so he's, familiar with the area. So he's a local, I guess, as you would say. I think maybe this is a good opportunity to sort of pivot into sort of what we do, because so most people have probably not heard of our parent company, which is Group 1001. And we're but probably nowadays about $65 billion in funds under management. So it's a massive company that again, that's sort of the holding company. You may not be familiar with that name. And what we primarily sell is annuities. So that's, financial product. Not going to, like you said, I'm not going to bring the show to a screeching halt talking about annuities.
Put a large sum of money. This is not financial advice. Large sum of money in up front, and it pays you over the course of a time period.
Correct,
right?
exactly. And so historically, the annuity product has been something you've had to buy through a third party. So if you sat down with your financial advisor and he or she said, let's look at your portfolio, they may look and say, let's put a little bit of that into annuities. It's a traditional, it's going to have a nice, consistent rate of return for you. Maybe not as volatile as the stock market, but if you want that as a part of your portfolio, let's do that. So we have under Group 1001, we have a company called Delaware Life that I mentioned sometimes has run in IndyCar, has run in NASCAR. We've run that brand out there on occasion. And so Delaware Life is sort of selling that product B2B. So this is the person from Delaware Life who would sit down with your financial advisor and say, hey, if you're selling annuities, we'd like you to consider Delaware Life. So when you say, I'd like an annuity, they say, how about Delaware Life? So in order to buy an annuity, historically, you've had to have a financial advisor, so which means you probably have to have a lot of money because you don't have a financial advisor. And so Dan Towers, our CEO, said, why do you have to have a financial advisor to buy annuities? So what Gainbridge is an opportunity to go direct to consumer. You don't have to have a financial advisor. You don't need a third party. You can just go to Gainbridge.com and buy an annuity. Sort of hadn't been sort of done before. It's a very new opportunity. And so for as little as $1,000, people can buy annuities by going direct to Gainbridge.com. So again, at the risk of losing your audience, that's why you'll see Gainbridge out front in the majority of our sponsorships, because it's a direct-to-consumer offering, whereas Delaware Life, it's more a B2B sale.
Yeah.
On occasion, it's good for us to get that brand out there so that our reps who are out there calling on financial advisors have a little bit of the air cover of having their brand seen.
Yeah.
But you'll see Gainbridge on most of our stuff, and that's all. I'm done talking
there
about
you go.
but at least that sets a sets the stage for what we do.
So many people have seen Gainbridge Fieldhouse, have seen Indy 500, and seen Gainbridge's logo. But no, I would honestly, that would be a fun segment of just asking what people think. I could bet because of Bridgestone, I could bet people think Gainbridge is a tire.
Right.
So now we're clearing it up. Gainbridge is a financial product.
Financial services product, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you don't want the volatility of the stock market and want consistent returns, that's Gainbridge. And again, it's for as little as $1,000, you can purchase it. We have products right now that are going up against CDs. So somebody who wants wants sort of the CD sort of stability, but our rate of return right now is 3 and 4 times what it is for us. Yeah. So you can sort of have a CD product. Maybe your daughter is getting married in a couple years and you want to set aside money and say, hey, I can't have the volatility of the stock market, but I want to do this for a couple years. So so it's a good opportunity for people who are at that place where this sort of financial product makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Is it a newer brand?
Yes. So I'd say the brand has been out there about 3 years. And so and the other thing too that Dan did with our sponsorships is our sponsorship development really preceded the rollout of the brand, because ultimately we're talking about people investing their money with us, right? So it's not you don't want to sort of arrive on the scene and be like, hey, look at us, and have it be a company you've never heard of, et cetera. So being in all these places and putting the brand out there, when somebody does get to the point where, hey, I want to buy an annuity, this is a company, they type in their search engine, purchase an annuity. Gainbridge hopefully comes up high in the search engine. They've at least heard of us, right?
They're on the Fieldhouse, right? They're on the Indy 500.
Correct.
They're on the LPGA. They're on NASCAR, right?
Correct.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about this. So how long have you guys been the lead sponsor of the Indy 500?
7 years.
So 7 years. Well, one, have you guys noticed an uptick in popularity of IndyCar racing in general over the last 7 years? Let's say you're probably more versed in the last 3 years since you've been there. But even in the last 3 years, coming out of COVID, have you seen an uptick there?
Well, I would say the one thing that we've definitely seen the uptick with is the recent again, people who aren't in the weeds on it, IndyCar has just changed from NBC to Fox this last year. And this isn't NBC does a great job producing motorsports, but Fox really has leaned in on the production side. They've really talked about the drivers and developing the personalities.
Didn't they roll out Tom Brady at the Indy 500
yes,
this year?
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, they had all of their Fox personalities there. They had A-Rod there, they had Jeter there, they had all those guys there.
What's the contract length that you sign when you become the lead sponsor of a...
Yeah, I mean, it varies from sponsorship to sponsorship. Sometimes they're 3, sometimes 5, 10. So those are sort of the varying things. But we were under contract with Colton on the 26th with Andretti, and with with the race. The move to Fox was not a part of the consideration. Like, it just happened within the scope of both of those deals. But the viewership year over year on the various events that have been on Fox versus NBC, the viewership has been up, and I think it's in large part due to the promotion that Fox has gotten behind it. Because, you know, anything that you watch on Fox, whether you're on Fox News or watching another sporting event on Fox, whatever it might be, especially leading up to the Indy 500, they were just pounding it on any of the Fox platforms.
And like for you all, when they lift the blackout for like, at least for like central Indiana, like that has to be another, I don't even know. I mean, let's say like 500,000 people or 1 million people. I don't know what the number is, but like that's an extra incentive of like more people seeing the Gainbridge logo.
Yeah, that's
like,
huge.
How many impressions, like at like post Indy 500, when they send you, I'm sure they send some type of report of like viewership. How many impressions did Gainbridge get from the Indianapolis 500?
It's in the millions, and the report came, and I haven't dug into it, but it's crazy. I mean,
maybe like billions.
I wouldn't say it's billions, but it's definitely in the high millions, and you know, it's a part of it's, you know, the way it's integrated into the broadcast, and a lot of it comes from, frankly, how well Colton's running in the 26, and so a lot of the value that we see from IndyCar week to week, as well as obviously with the 500, is from how well Colton's running.
Well, and then let's talk about the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Became the naming, got naming rights. Is that I don't know, how do you say that?
Yeah, naming rights partner.
You got the naming rights partner 3 years ago.
Yep.
3 years ago, it was the Pacers, and they were all right. Like, they're figuring it out, you know, ups and downs, the whole 9 yards there. But you also gained this crazy popularity of the Indiana Fever. And when you guys became the naming rights partner, I'm sure the Fever were in there somewhere, but it probably wasn't that big of a deal.
Correct. It was not a huge, when we sat down, you know, at the end of each year, to your point, the Pacers will sit down with us and say, hey, here's sort of the recap, and here's the recap of the value that the Fever delivered. And so the Fever 100% at that point was an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
It's so negligible in the big picture. But obviously with the arrival of Caitlin and what's happened with the Fever, it's been off the charts. And then also on the men's side, the difference between the Pacers being a playoff team and not being a playoff team is massive.
And is there like a just in sponsorship in general, like when you guys sign up to be the naming rights partner, is it like, hey, if they make a playoff run, it's going to be X amount more in under sponsorship? Or is it just like, you guys get this much more value because the team's good?
Yeah, it really depends on the deal. But, you know, typically, minimally, you'll be in for whatever the purchasing of tickets. Like, so for example, it's like if obviously we're in the finals now, but like along the way to get all your tickets, once they advance to an extra round, to purchase those tickets is this, you know, extra round purchase tickets is this.
But it's not like, oh yeah, by the way, Gainbridge Fieldhouse is going to be on TV this week again. Like, we're going to need another invoice or whatever.
No,
that's really cool for you. Like, the variability is, it's kind of like, when they're hot, you're getting a ton for your money. And if they're not, then you're not getting that much for your money.
Right. Well, it's the story I love to tell is I was in, you know, golf for the last 30 years, and I've got all of my buddies who I went to college in Vermont, so all of my friends from college are all in and around the Boston area. And so I had the sort of the dream job of working in sports. You know, they're lawyers and finance guys and whatever. And I remember they thought I was crazy. They're like, you're leaving the LPGA to go where? And I'm like, I'm going to a company, Group 1001. It's based in Indy. We sell annuities. And they're like, you're leaving golf, like to do this? And they said, again, and I'm explaining Gainbridge, sort of what I just did with Delaware Life and all that stuff. And it wasn't until the Celtics were playing the Pacers in last year's playoffs that my phone is blowing up, and all my buddies are like, hey, is that Gainbridge that's is that the company you work for now? And so I was like, yes, I work for a real company. Like, yeah. And they're like, oh, wow, that's cool. We didn't make the connection. So it was only when the Celtics came and played at Gainbridge Fieldhouse that all my buddies in Boston realized I still had a real job and wasn't pretending.
Quick pause. You've probably heard us talking about it, but at the end of July, we're headed down to Brown County for the Bourbon and Barbecue Festival. July 26th. This is a Saturday. So the Friday night, we're doing our Moontown Bar takeover. We're going to spend $1,000 at the bar. You need to be there. We're staying overnight. in Brown County. We're going to hit the Cinnamon Roll place. I don't know what the name of it off the top of my head. We're going to hit there for breakfast on Sunday. Maybe hit a little hike. Who knows? And at noon, we are rocking the Bourbon and Barbecue Fest at Hard Truth. They have 4 different acts. Bourbon and barbecue tastings and pairings, bourbon blending and cocktail crafting classes. There's a VIP bourbon and cigar lounge. I mean, come on. I think tickets start at $10, or if you want to upgrade that, $35 gets you the barbecue sampler pass. And for $75, you get all the VIP access. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be down there. I think I'm taking our whole staff and a bunch of my friends are all coming down. So come hang out with us. Check our website at getindiana.com and you'll see an article that we wrote about our whole itinerary and trip to Brown County. You can buy all your tickets, reserve your place, and make sure you're down there. We'll see you at the end of July 25th, 26th. For an unforgettable celebration of bourbon, barbecue, and great times. We'll see you there.
This year with the Fever getting all but one of their games on national television, right? So before they probably, you might have been in one of the local RSNs or whatever on occasion, but for every game but one of theirs to be on national TV, all of the home games on national TV, that's, exposure that's off the charts relative to what it was.
Pre-drafting Caitlin Clark, like you talk about, it was kind of like they probably talked about it in your end of the year wrap up meeting or whatever, but definitely not top of mind. As that first season came out, what was that recap meeting like then?
You can't compare, right? Because it's exponential. They were probably opening up the field, the field house 30 minutes before games, because you're only getting a couple thousand people into the games. Now it's, 15,000 people that are in there, and they got to open up 90 minutes beforehand just to get everybody through the gates. It's incredible.
Let's just say we use hypotheticals here.
Yep.
Right? Hypotheticals. If you were in a 5-year deal or a 6-year deal with the Pacer Sports and Entertainment and they draft Caitlin Clark, and do they come back at the end of the year and are like, hey, by the way, now your sponsorship's worth X amount? Is it hey, we'll get right on the next contract? Or do you try to negotiate and be like, here's a fair rate because now we're getting 1 billion views or whatever?
Right. Well, it's let's just say that I was glad that we were in a contract already. So we were already under contract. But any of those Fever sponsors who might not have been under contract, so let's just say Jersey Patch or any of those sort of folks, they, once their renewal comes up, they're going to definitely see an increase, which is warranted, right? Because it's if it's hey, you're now 10 times more people are viewing this product, so it's just a matter of whether you get the Fever is successful in getting all of that 10x.
Well, imagine being let's say 3 years ago, you signed a 5-year deal with the Fever, a local place, Mom and Pop's Pizza Shop is the Jersey Patch for the Fever. It's a $50,000 a year or whatever deal. And then they draft Caitlin Clark and they get 1 billion views on their jerseys. And then they get the return invoice at the end of the contract. And it's that same jersey buy is going to be $5 million for the next year, right?
100%.
Because they literally got, I think that they said the Fever, their social media, got more views Caitlin Clark's first year than any other sports property. Isn't that great? We had Allison Barber on.
Oh yeah, sure.
And she talks about they got over 1 billion views on social media content. That's crazy.
The most interesting in the recap that you were talking about, the most interesting thing is that the Fever, in terms of merchandise, game day merchandise sales, were second only to the Golden State Warriors. So they were second in merchandise sales across the entire. So if you put the NBA and the WNBA, you take all those teams, whatever that is, 50 some odd teams, of all those teams, more than the Knicks, more than the Celtics, more than the OKC, whatever, the Fever were number 2 in game day merchandise sales. It's crazy. It's crazy.
That's awesome for you all. But this is why you get rewarded. When you're a community partner of Indianapolis, become the naming rights partner early on enough, and then when good things start to happen, you get to reap the benefits of that and the rewards and the brand impressions and all that cool stuff. But it's just the same, had the teams not panned out or the team's not been good, it's you still sit there every day and you have the suite and you do all the things. And if the arena's empty, you still want to fill your seats. So I like it. I think it's cool to get to see the rewards when the team pays off because they need the sponsors. They need the community partners to buy in especially when they're at their lowest.
Yeah, well, and surely when the teams aren't playing well and aren't delivering, the team's not coming to give you a refund, right? So like so like it's like if the Fever, prior to Caitlin arriving, weren't delivering a lot of value, it's just like, hey, that's the deal. So like it's hard to say when you come back and say, okay, now we're making a lot of money. It's like, well, again, to your point, we were there when it wasn't the hottest thing, so we're benefiting now. But again, I think it all evens out.
Yeah, and then so you're obviously not from Indiana, and you're from the East Coast, and now live in Florida. Like, what were your thoughts on Indianapolis, on the Indy 500, on the Pacers and the Fever and all this stuff before you got into our ecosystem 3 years ago?
During that journey of my career journey moving around, I lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan for 5 years. My wife is from South Bend. She's actually from Michigan, but the town just across the border. Edwardsburg.
Oh, there we go.
So, just across the border. So, have spent a lot of time here in the Midwest, those 5 years. From there, I moved to Dayton, Ohio. So I lived in Dayton, Ohio. So I'm very familiar with the Midwest.
You've been dancing around. You've been dancing around the Hoosier State.
Exactly. So, but I do remember we spent the Millennium New Year's Eve here at, may have been Conseco Fieldhouse, Bankers Life. I don't know what it was, but in 2000, that's where my wife and I went to. That's where we spent our New Year's Eve. John Mellencamp had a, December 31, 1999 concert, and so that's what we did.
I think it would have been Market Square Arena still, though,
okay,
right?
99?
Maybe.
I
or
don't
like
know.
right in that time. Well, actually, I lied because 99 might have been Market Square, and then they built the new one, I believe, 2000. They opened the new one. Because Reggie and that team, the 2000 team that made the finals, they were the first year in the new field house, I believe. Someone out there that's going to know way more about Pacers history than I am could correct me in the comments, please. But I think that's when the transition was, 99 to 2000.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, so long story short, I'm very familiar with the Midwest, have spent a lot of time in Indy. Again, living in Grand Rapids, I sort of felt like Grand Rapids was sort of like a smaller version of Indianapolis. Just a great town, great community, a community where people are invested in events when they come to the community. I see a lot of similarities between my time in Grand Rapids, where I was running a Champions Tour event, and being here in Indy. The way Indy has been able to attract major events, and obviously the Big Ten football championship regularly. The folks at ISC have just gotten the swim trials back for 2028. That was an amazing event. This is a community that clearly rallies around events when they come, and so even with the NBA All-Star Game, everybody at the Pacers said we want this to be the best All-Star Game ever. WNBA All-Star Game, we want this to be the best All-Star Game ever. So this is a town that when you have the opportunity to showcase itself nationally, everybody buys in, and that's been super cool to be a part of, even though I don't live here full time. I spent a lot of time here.
When was your first Indy 500?
3 years ago.
So it was after, there were actually fans in attendance.
Yes.
So
yes.
one of the first, it was a real one.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so you walk in there for the first time and you experience that. How would you sell the Indy 500 to your friends that live in Boston?
When you tell people that it's the biggest single-day sporting event in the world, they're like, well, no, the Super Bowl. And it's like, no, the Super Bowl has 75,000 people. This has 4 times as many people as the Super Bowl, right? There's 300,000 whatever people. But what's really cool is, in order to beat all the traffic that everybody here is very familiar with, we board buses at 7 a.m. and ride in, and we have the good fortune of having the top floor of the pagodas where we entertain everybody. It's fantastic.
So you and I literally have the opposite Indy 500 experiences, okay? So my whole shtick, this was like what led me to start a media company last year. I had started putting out content. I went on this mission to become the first car in the infield of the Indy 500. So I bought this old Dodge truck, 1986. We flipped it off of Facebook Marketplace. I sold sponsorship on it, and I made a video. I got in line at 9 p.m. the night before, and I made all these videos, and I gave away everything for free in the infield of the Indy 500. And that literally, we got 1 million views on our content during that time, and I quit my job the next week, and I've been hosting the podcast and doing all this stuff since. But what's fun about this is I'm in turn 3 doing our stuff there, and you're on the top floor of the pagoda. But here we are in the studio together.
Right, exactly. But I mean, and you can appreciate this. So as the first car in, you can appreciate where I was going with this story. So it's eerie when you arrive, right? Because, we get in and you go upstairs in the top floor of the pagoda and you go out on the deck and there's nobody there, right? It's just these bleachers, and then and then all of a sudden it's like, you're inside for a little bit, and then 2 or 3 hours later, you look, and there's 300, and you're like, where did these people, come from?
Like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, you like look out, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I see people everywhere. Of all walks of life.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Have you been down in the infield before?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've not done the snake pit. I think I've well outgrown the snake pit.
Fair.
There was a different era for me.
When you tell it to your friends and you're like, guys, you need to come do this. Like, you need to come to the Indy 500. Like, what's the feedback that you get? Like, they're like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Well, it's, again, it's probably a little bit of us all being Northeasterners. It's not something we none of us grew up around racing. So, but again, I think it's a buck for even my racing motorsports friends. It's a bucket list event, right? It's just that's why the ratings are, 9 million people watch it every year, because it's just sort of Americana, and it's amazing.
And you just have to be there. Like, I can't explain it to people.
Right.
But like, when you're there, there's just an energy.
Absolutely.
It's like when you're like playoff basketball. I noticed it. Gainbridge Fieldhouse in the playoffs. Like, I go to a decent amount of the regular season games, and they're fun and it's great and it's exciting. But like, a regular season NBA game like doesn't matter that much.
Right.
But playoffs, Gainbridge Fieldhouse, that place is rocking.
Yes.
How many games do you go to a decent amount of games?
Yeah, I've been to, I would say, went to a couple playoff games last year. I've gone to a couple playoff games this year. And it's incredible. To your point, like during the regular season, and we have a suite, as you would expect, and you barely watch the game, admittedly. You're spending more time entertaining customers and doing all of that kind of stuff. Oh, are we winning? Okay, good, we're winning, or we're not winning, or whatever. But every point, everybody's just in there, is hanging on every single point. The place is full. Everybody's got their shirts on. It's just an incredible energy.
Yeah, the shirt. I love the shirts. I can only imagine being one. These have been away games where Tyrese has been so clutch.
Yeah.
But like, I just can only imagine like one of those at home, like when he hops up on the scorer's table, like being in there. Like,
oh my gosh.
Oh, that place has to be. I'm excited. I'm going game 4, which is going to be super fun. When you guys think about all the sports sponsorships that you have, like, what's your favorite one for you personally?
It probably is the Indy 500, just because that's, again, of all of the sponsorships that we have, that's the one that I remember as a kid. It's so aspirational, probably never even considered that I'd ever even go, right? So it's just amazing. And, it's a global sporting event, right? Like, it's up until, I guess, this next year where it's going to be Canada. But it was, if you're a motorsports enthusiast, the F1 started in Monaco, and that, and then you watch the Monaco race, and then you watch the Indy 500, and then the Charlotte 600 in or the Coke 600 in Charlotte or whatever. So, but just the fact that it's truly the center of the motorsports ecosystem that day is really incredible.
I have to ask, when you are the lead sponsor of the Indy 500, I'm sure they pull out all the bells and whistles and all the cool stuff. Is there like one singular activation or thing you get access to as the lead sponsor that you're just like, I can't believe we get to do this?
I don't necessarily get to do it, but I know that on occasion we've had some of our guests down in it's like the groove, right? So like where the scoring pylon is, there's like a groove where you can sit in the groove as the cars are going past. So you've got pit road on one side and then the racetrack on the other, and there's like a little sort of space in between. And so we've had some folks down in there. So I've not personally done it, but that would be, pretty cool on the opening lap to have the cars go whipping by, and you're just literally on the wall there.
Because it's like a lot of people get access to go in the pits and do all that stuff. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's really cool. I love it. But imagine being out in front of that, like right by the pylon. Oh my gosh, that has to be so cool. Amazing. Well, we've come to the end of the segment. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. I think it's awesome to see Indiana companies that are successful and doing big things. You said $650 billion of assets under management.
65 billion.
65 billion of assets under management. I think that's incredible. And it's cool that you guys give back and are like, not even give back, but you're just like part of the community. It's like, I think that you think of national events, like you could probably go put your Gainbridge on the Staples Center or whatever, or I guess it would not be called the Staples Center, but to support local teams, especially 3 years ago for the Pacers and the Fever, 7 years ago for the Indy 500, and then to be able to ride the highs as the teams are both cooking, as the Indy 500 just continues to rise in popularity. I think it's so, so cool. I've loved learning more about it. I've loved learning more about the company behind the brand. Everyone knows Gainbridge Fieldhouse, but really, what is Gainbridge, right? So it's been cool to learn that. The final thing I do want to ask is, when you come to Indianapolis, is there something that you're the most excited about, like a place you're excited to go or a hidden gem per se?
When I come to town, I usually try to build it around some event. So, obviously the finals are in town right now. So we actually today out at our headquarters, we're doing a wall, a little bit to your giving back to the community. We're doing a wall build with Habitat for Humanity. So we have 300 of our employees coming out, trying to give back to the community in a philanthropic effort. And so it kicks off what we call 1,001 Hours of Impact, which is our employee volunteerism initiative, trying to couple with 1,000 hours of volunteerism over the course of like 60 days. So I think what I enjoy the most about my job, maybe not exactly what you're asking, is the way that we're able to use our sports sponsorships to engage employees, reach out into the community, and hopefully, leave the community in a better place than we found it.
I love that. I think that's really special. So 2 parts to this question.
Yep.
One, a lot of Hoosiers venture to Florida for whether it be spring break or snowbirding in the winter. If they're in Daytona Beach, is there a spot they have to go to?
There's a place called The Cellar.
The Cellar.
The Cellar. It's a restaurant that's in the basement of sort of an oldish building, but it's one of those places that seats like 16 people or something like that. And, legend has it that Grover Cleveland or like presidents and stuff like that. I don't know if it's Grover Cleveland, but like presidents of that era have
if it's not Grover Cleveland, like, what a pull. Like,
if it is Grover Cleveland, even more impressive.
Yeah, right.
But there's a place called The Cellar, and it's off the beaten path. It's hard to get a reservation at, but that to me is sort of like one of the coolest. You have to be a local to know this place exists. But again, it's sort of like nationally recognized, but you also have to be a local.
Okay.
So look up the Cellar
in Daytona Beach.
Yes.
I will give a shout out to Nancy and Chris Hepp live in Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville in Daytona. They're my friend's parents. And when we go down and visit them, I'm going to recommend, hey, we got to go to the Cellar.
Absolutely. Make sure you plan ahead so that you get a reservation.
Exactly. And then the opposite of that, is there a place that when you come to town in Indianapolis that you can't wait to get to?
Going to be cliche, but St. Elmo's is a great experience. So I wish I had a more interesting answer than that. But
it's so great.
But just the sort of the experience of that. And I should also say that I love what the Pacers has built over there at Commission's Row. That's a very cool venue to sort of pregame before, have a nice dinner over there before you head into the field house.
What is Indiana known for broadly? When people from outside of the state think about Indiana, what do they think of?
I would say the hospitality. To me, that's what I mean. It's certainly what I feel like, and I also think that that's a Midwest thing in general, especially for somebody who's coming from New Jersey, which I would say we're probably not particularly known for that. But I always say that when I moved to the Midwest, so I'd lived in New Jersey, I lived in Miami for a little bit before I moved to Grand Rapids, and people from Grand Rapids would ask me, they would say why is everybody from New Jersey so mean? And I said, well, look at it this way. I said, I feel like maybe the people from New York and New Jersey are like baseline normal, and then everybody around here is just exceedingly nice. So that's the way I look at it.
That's
but
fair.
I would say,
you guys aren't mean. You're just normal, and we're just very, very
You're
kind.
very nice. So I would say certainly the hospitality, and like I said, with these big events that comes through, everybody takes so much pride in making sure that that you guys roll out the red carpet and do everything. So and even just when I come in for meeting with the team that's our sponsorship team that's based here, I mean, it's just everybody's just always in a good mood, and it's just it's a fun place to visit for sure.
I love it, man. Mike, thank you so much for coming on and sharing and telling us all about how Gainbridge is getting plugged into both the Indiana community with the Indy 500 and with Gainbridge Fieldhouse, as well as what you said, women's tennis, LPGA, all these really cool, NASCAR, all these great events. I think it's so cool. And I'm excited to see as obviously the Pacers win the title. And
yes, of course.
The Fever then go get theirs.
Yep.
And then Indy 500 next year, just Gainbridge gaining in popularity. I think it's so cool. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the story.
Thanks for having me in.
I thought that was a fascinating interview with Mike Nichols. I think that it's really cool how much Gainbridge invests into sport. I can only imagine the number that they invest into sports to be the lead sponsor of the Indy 500 and Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It has to be astronomical. Maybe we can get them on a little get-in sponsorship. I might have to send him an email in a couple days. You probably saw the op-ed that Mayor David Holt of Oklahoma City wrote in the Indy Star. I made a video about this last week, I believe. This dude is beloved. He's the only politician that I've ever seen where people will get in the comments on TikTok and rave about how awesome he is. Run for president, run for governor, run for this, run for Dave Holt, save the world. Like, he is crazy, like crazy awesome. So I made that video. He commented on it, liked it, followed me. And then I was DMing him saying like, dude, what kind of like cult following do you have out in Oklahoma City? I got to get you on the podcast. So Monday, we're releasing an exclusive interview with Dave Holt, Mayor Dave Holt of Oklahoma City. It's going to be phenomenal. We've got 30 minutes on the books. We're going to talk about, so his op-ed article 30 years ago, Indianapolis won the United Airlines contract that then forced Oklahoma City to reevaluate themselves and look in the mirror. And that if it weren't for Indianapolis, Oklahoma City wouldn't be where it is today. They wouldn't have put an emphasis on sports. Their big thing, I mean, maybe you saw them challenge our mayor to like a bet through the playoffs, and they wagered a game for the College Softball World Series, whitewater rafting, where they're going to host the Olympics in 2028, and a dinner at their illustrious Cattleman's Steakhouse. And I was like, dude, come on. Fever game, 2-seater at the Indy 500, and dinner at St. Elmo. Definitely way better of a reward than that. No offense, Dave. But we're going to bring him on. We're going to chat all the things of his tenure with Oklahoma City as the mayor. He has like 50,000, maybe 40,000 followers on Instagram. Like, people love this guy, and it's clear that he cares about Oklahoma City, and his article was super respectful. So I'm excited to dive in. Tune back in Monday morning. We're dropping an exclusive interview with Mayor Dave Holt all about just these finals. Hopefully that point, it's 3-1 Pacers, and everyone's excited, and I get to kind of like rev it in a little bit. And if it's not, it's going to be an interesting interview. We'll see you on Monday.